Many parameters used in literary critical study today were laid down by Plato and Aristotle. Plato banned poetry from his ideal republic on the grounds that it was three times removed from truth, being merely an imitation of an imitation. It imitated the world of physical appearances, which was itself an imperfect copy of the eternal world of forms and essences. Plato also saw poetry as appealing to our lower nature, exciting the mob of passions to rebel against the rule of reason. On the other hand, Aristotle saw poetry as a productive art and assigned it essentially a moral purpose. He laid down the formulation of tragedy as an action which was complete. It is linear with beginning, middle, and end. Tragedy is serious, involving significant moral choice. Its language was elevated and it produced emotions of pity and terror in an audience through their sympathy and identification with the fall of the hero into misfortune, not through some evil nature but through an overarching human fault or mistake. Classical criticism also includes the Roman poet Horace, who urged that poetry must be both pleasing and morally and intellectually useful. This insight, regulated into the formula that literature must teach and delight, dominated much literary criticism until the 18th century. Neoplatonic literary criticism, such as that of Plotinus, saw literature as a direct expression of eternal essences. It provided access to the higher spiritual realms and to the divine. The Neoplatonists elaborated notions of allegory which enabled a harmony between the Old and New Testaments, the new being allegorically prefigured in the Old. Augustine attempted to trace the appropriate connections between literal and figurative language in the reading of Scripture. Medieval criticism, such as that of Aquinas and Dante, refined these ideas of allegory. The meanings of language encompassed not just the literal level, but the allegorical, moral, and anagogical or mystical levels. In general, medieval aesthetics emphasized the beauty, order, and harmony of God's creation. It saw literature as one part of an ordered hierarchy of knowledge leading to the divine, whose apex was theology, the study of God. Renaissance criticism, such as that of Sir Philip Sidney, became more humanistic and secular, reviving classical learning. Italian writers such as Giraldi and Castelvetro reassessed the classical heritage. The French writers Bellet and Ronsard defended the vernacular as a medium of poetic expression. Sidney found it necessary to defend poetry from the many attacks being leveled against it. In general, Renaissance writers re examined the notions of imitation, the didactic role of literature, and the classification of genres. The neoclassicists of the 18th century, such as Pope, Dryden, and Johnson, were even more stringent in observing classical virtues such as rationality, moderation, balance, and decorum, the harmony of form and content, and the dramatic unities of time, place, and action. The use of wit, a broad term referring to intellectual virtuosity and ability, was much advocated and its meaning disputed. Enlightenment thinkers such as John Locke, whose philosophy is one of the foundations of modern bourgeois liberalism, opposed the use of wit and which was metaphorical and ambiguous, and urged instead a language that was clear, distinct, and unambiguous. Romantic literary criticism reacted against these strict tendencies. Influenced by Kant, it valued imagination as a higher and more comprehensive faculty than reason, one which united what is given to our senses with the categorizing ability of our intellect. In his critique of judgment, Kant emphasizes for the first time a systematic formulation of the autonomy of art and literature as a domain free of the constraints of morality or utility. Throughout the 19th century, this notion of autonomy developed in the Romantics, the theories of Poe, Baudelaire, and the French symbolists, the aestheticians such as Pater and Wilde, and in writers such as Henry James. A number of other critical currents arose in the mid to late 19th century. Realism, which included requirements of probability and lifelike detail. Naturalism, which attempted to model itself on scientific observation of both internal, psychological, and external worlds. Marxism, which placed literature in an economic and broad cultural setting, and a number of historical theories influenced by Hegel of the evolution of literature and its internal shaping by its unique historical circumstances. 20th century added its own concerns such as the problematic status of language in general, the questioning of identity, the issues of race and gender, and the world of mass media, technology, globalism, and the semiotic codes underlying the functioning of power. The history of literary criticism has yielded a number of enduring concerns which persisted into 21st century. The notion of mimesis, the truth value of literature, its connections with tradition, the issue of literature as a production of art or genius, the connection between literal and figurative language, the moral, social, and ideological function of literature, the definition of beauty, literature as a form of knowledge, and connections with philosophy and rhetoric.